good.
I'll willingly throw some of those out there if you want.
Yeah. I don't know what to make of Houston.
My job is to protect you, Matt. I would never do that.
Protect me.
The Bama Rutgers game.
Rutgers stinks.
That guy, not Bailey, the other one, Harper.
He loves taking really long bad twos.
Yeah, I can see that. I can see that.
That's most of that Rutgers team. They love taking bad shots that they probably got away with in high school when they were freshmen. Now they're freshmen, sorry.
Friends, we are back. It is 11 o'clock Eastern on a beautiful Saturday morning, last day of November 30th. First and foremost, hope everybody is in the midst of just a great Thanksgiving holiday weekend. And what could be better than throwing a bunch of college football games up to close out this regular season, solidify some of the playoff things. And here at Stokastic, we got you ready and covered for this DFS slate. I am Ben Rasa. Matt Gajewski joins me, survived his travels. We're ready to rock. It is now or never for a lot of teams. We're going to find out a lot of answers today. We got a full slate of games. How are we feeling?
Doing pretty good, pretty tired, but last week of the year, man. Let's get into it. How are you?
I'm good. I'm always tired because I had to stay up watching 8 overtimes in the Georgia game for reasons unknown. That was a game, man. Never seen something quite like that for a lot of different reasons, but they're good. They survive. We'll see what they do next week. We got a lot to get to here. I want to start where we always start, and I actually think it's not going to take too long. What does the injury situation look like on this slate?
I don't know. Everything's in projections and updated. I'm just kind of waiting for it to come in.
It seems like, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, there's always the chance of something insane happening. But are there guys sporting, we already had the Egg Bowl. We already had some of these injury spots. Are there a lot of guys that we're waiting on, or is it just we're going to have to react if something random happens?
I don't think so, but I'm pretty far behind, so I'm not sure.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, just scanning what I saw, it doesn't look like there's a ton out there, to be completely honest. Things that we've known for quite a while, and then there's some secondary pieces here and there, but I don't see the glaring Q tags in all this. So, friends, I see you in chat. Everybody's filing in. We'll give them a couple minutes. I'll mention right off the bat, if you're new to the channel, welcome to Stokastic. Over 100,000 of your friends are already subscribed. So you can hit that button right there. It takes 2 seconds. The like button as well helps us out. It's been an awesome year. We're going to finish it strong here in week 14. Here we go. Now, let's get into it. Let's just get things started. We'll dive right into the board and we'll go position by position. We'll talk about the ownership and we'll talk about some of the potential pay down spots. So we're going to get things started with quarterback. And it's a lot of the same characters. Cam Ward on, I feel like the majority of our slates has, let us off. When I look at it at the same time, what do you make of quarterback today?
It seems like it's pretty open for the most part. There's a lot of value guys on this slate. I don't think going up to Cam Ward makes the most sense, but you could do it if you wanted to take the luxury spend route and use that as your piece of leverage.
When you look at the rest of this quarterback situation, so we've got Cam Ward. He's 10,700. From there, you've got Jalen Milroe. He's $9,900. He was, 15 carries for 7 yards against the vaunted Oklahoma defense. I really don't know what to say about that. Does he bounce back today?
I think he could. It's not the best game environment. Definitely a tough matchup with the lower total on this slate. The strength of Auburn's team is their defense. They're a little better up front, which I'm not sure is a positive or a negative for Milroe because he can win in both ways, but sometimes he struggles on the ground, sometimes he struggles through the air. He's another player that's kind of a luxury spend who I would prefer to just find someone else at a cheaper price tag and balance out my lineup a little more rather than live and die by the really expensive signal callers. So that kind of stems to Ward, Milrow, a lot of the expensive guys.
Yeah, I mean, anytime you're paying that type of premium, there's going to be an opportunity cost. I'm just going to extend it a little further for you. Is Kyle McCord in that same mindset? Is Riley Leonard in that same mindset? Or are those guys starting to become price points that are a little more powerful?
McCord actually projects decently well, but that's largely just the game total. And it's why you actually still can play Ward at that exorbitant price tag, as this game is a 67.5 total. On the McCord side, I'm always worried about sacks. You're going to have to worry about that with Miami on this slate. I think he'll be a little higher owned than people might expect, but his pass catchers are all reasonably priced. I think I would rather just play a one-off than play something like a McCord stack or a Ward stack today.
When we go down again, kind of just up and down the salary, it looks like the core of the ownership, it's not just solely two guys, clearly, but Garrett Green looks very popular. He's 7,600. Kevin Jennings is flat 7. He looks to be very popular. Is that kind of where you're living in that? I feel like that's a pure mid-range, and then there'll be some salary savers we'll talk about, but I want to talk about Garrett Green and Kevin Jennings specifically to see what you think.
Yeah, Green is a occupant of the second best game total wise, 64.5 against Texas Tech. Both these defenses are atrocious, so you could certainly see this game getting up and down. Green has 18 design rush attempts over the last 2 games. That's 18 apiece. So extremely involved on the ground. With him, there's a little more risk than, like Morton on the other side, because Texas Tech largely just runs an air raid. So if Morton has a good game, it's all coming through the air with those stacking partners. With Green, he could get vultured on the goal line. There's paths to him failing, which leave me a little bit weary. But for cash games, he's the first guy in your lineups. Then I think you have a decision between Morton and Jennings. Jennings and SMU against Cal, the total's a little worse at 55, but I honestly think that is kind of low. I might bet the over on this. Pace is awesome in this game. SMU 23rd, Cal 33rd. And SMU certainly going to do their part as 2 touchdown favorites. Jennings is very mobile and an awesome passer. I mean, you can't really put his props high enough at this point. He's in the 250s, which is as high as they've been all season long. I like Jennings. I think he's a solid pivot, but I think you want for cash games 2 of these 3.
Yeah, I mean, with chat, by the way, I just dropped that new link for everybody in the other chat. You'll see it. Don't worry about that. We'll get it all up and running. I think so too. But my question is, if you're going with them, does that render a guy like Baron Morton? I'm not gonna say useless. That's way too strong. He's in that same game. You have him behind Green, or is he just another option that we really need to consider?
Yeah, it's 2 of the 3.
Okay, fair enough. This guy has been battered and bruised on Betting You. I believe you labeled him a football warrior for playing through many injuries. Brady Cook is alive and still fighting. What is the deal with his situation here? He's $4,900. Is that just reflective of the fact that he's been in and out of the lineup? Is it a misprice? I mean, what do you make of that price point, and does it put him firmly in play?
I think it's pretty appropriate for the current edition of Brady Cook, who's playing through a sprained ankle. He's been awful, but I don't think it's really any fault of his own. He is a warrior. If you're looking for positives, he's now in his second game back. The designed rush attempts jumped from 2 in that first game to 10 in the last game. I still don't think he's 100%, but at least it's a notch in the right direction, seeing that 10 instead of the 2 number. Arkansas's defense is awful, especially against the pass. So this is like a semi-decent get-right game for Brady Cook. You're just trying to really guess on how healthy he is, and I don't have the answer to that. With the price, I think it's worth taking some shots, but I'm not going crazy with him.
Let's keep going with quarterback. There'll be a couple other names, and then we'll get to FanDuel as well. But some of these guys, I feel like they've either played night games for a while or I just haven't thought about them. Nico for Tennessee would be one of them. 5,500. Your boy Jalen Daniels and Lenore Sellers are both 7,100. Maybe they're pivots off Kevin Jennings. Are we getting to the tournament large field GPP section of it, or are these guys on the outside looking in for you? What do you make of that next band of quarterbacks?
I think Daniels is the most interesting for Kansas. Going up against Baylor. We just saw Baylor play that wicked shootout against West Virginia. Their defense is awful. Daniels does have enough mobility to get to in this range. I think Sawyer Robertson's a better pivot than some of those other guys you mentioned just for this matchup, being a pretty good game to target. As far as Sellers goes, he's playing Clemson, who has an awesome defense, dealing with a lot of injuries. I'm trying to get a pulse on who's in and who's out for them. If they're missing a lot of guys, I would have more interest. But otherwise, I think that game could play towards the under. And then who else did you say in this range?
You have
Iamaleava. He's not in this price range, but I X'd him out.
Okay, fair enough. What about? I mean, I got to bring him in. He deserves it. What about Pavia?
I X'd him out too. I think he's hurt, man. His design carries have come down. They've been bringing in Nate Johnson for design carries every single game. This is like, he had 5 design carries in their last game, some of that opponent driven, but if you look, it's been on a pretty stark downward trend for him. Playing Tennessee's awesome front seven. I do not think Pavia is worth playing.
It's not.
I think he's hurt.
No, I mean, listen, it's
also, this will be his last college game if you like narratives.
It will be. He fought to try to get more, but no. It's not unreasonable too. Like, the guy took an absolute beat down all year, and he's been unbelievable. But it's not shocking to think that maybe he's run out of a little steam. It was like Haynes King last night, who I don't know how he did it. But just to round it out, I mean, there's really not that much else to talk about. Like, I assume you have minimal interest in like Cade Klubnik or Will Howard or guys like that.
Klubnik is interesting just because he runs. Very, very difficult matchup for him. But the other thing with Klubnik is you can make cheap stacks because they use so many receivers, and you have the emergence of the 2 freshmen at cheap prices. So they do make a little sense. Antonio Williams has also been targeted incessantly, not priced like it. So there is some interest just because of their prices, but the matchup is extremely hard. Will Howard against Michigan, I just don't know if Ohio State really plays this whole game with their starters in.
What a world. I mean, I'm sure they'll be ready, but at the same time, you are talking about nearly a 3-touchdown spread. We had a question, talk about a wild game. Any Peyton Thorne love? He was in quite a shootout last week with A&M. He's on the road here against Alabama.
I'll die on this hill. Peyton Thorne is actually good. He still has more interceptions than turnover-worthy plays. That speaks to the incompetence of his pass catchers. He's actually had a really good season efficiency-wise. He plays for a team that makes him look about as bad as possible. But this current addition to Alabama's defense shouldn't scare anybody.
Interesting.
I have one lineup. I mean, he's by far, like, he's way down this list. He's not even close to some of these other price-adjusted guys, kind of because of the way Auburn plays. But if you wanted to throw a dart on Peyton Thorne, I think he's better than a lot of guys on this slate who I X'd out, like Pavia and Iamaleava. I X'd out Sam Levitt.
Mendoza.
I X'd out Fafita. I didn't X out Mendoza. He's throwing. Maeva, I didn't get any, so I didn't have to worry about him.
Society X'd him out. Fair enough. All right, let's get over to FanDuel. Patrick Grimes, shout out to the Stokastic group. 3rd in the 3-3-3 Thanksgiving NFL and 2nd last night in the 5-5-5. That's called the heater, my friend. Keep that going. We're going to talk about Coleman. I'm interested in that as well, but we're going to stick with quarterbacks here. We go to the other side, and it's more of the same. Sellers, just price adjusted, looks like he gets a pretty nice bump over on FanDuel. He's $8,100 there. You've got Jennings. DJ Lagway is on that slate against the corpse of Florida State. Marcel Reed against Texas. Anything really changing on FanDuel? Rocco Beck, another name worth noting.
Beck comes up a decent amount, but it's really spread there. So he's my 3rd most owned quarterback at like 15%. He's been so bad recently that I just maybe am starting to develop a bias against him. With that said, Kansas State's defense is also awful, so it should be a pretty decent get-right spot. And when you look at pass rushes in the Big 12, Kansas State is among the worst. And a lot of the problem with Iowa State's offense is their O-line's incompetence, just getting killed back there. So he's a little more interesting. I have a little more Cam Ward on that site. Some of the other expensive quarterbacks really don't have much business being up that high. So Ward, he does project well even at an expensive price tag. Nussmeier's over there, got a little bit just because they brought his price tag way down. The biggest difference is probably no one seems to have figured out Lagway's any good, which he is. He's awesome. He's still 7,400 playing Florida State. I mean, what are we doing here? Lagway is my second most owned quarterback behind Kevin Jennings.
Interesting. Okay. Yeah. I mean, listen, you got a dream matchup. He's been awesome. Florida is on the Kansas short list of teams you really wouldn't want to play right now. There's no doubt about that. I'm gonna throw a name at you that I did not expect to. What do you make of Oklahoma and LSU, specifically Jackson Arnold?
They dropped their pass rate to like 20%. Some of that positive game script, but they clearly just do not want to throw the ball right now.
Can you blame them?
Not really, no.
Yeah.
They have like 2 scholarship receivers on their team.
It's not good. What else we got over here? Not much. Your boy Quinn Ewers, Chris, 0.8% owned projected. Yikes.
Yeah, it's probably 0.8 too high.
Yeah, there's really not that much difference. Well, last guy, and then we can get to running back and start building out the slate. What do you make of Avery Johnson? You know, he's in a big game against Iowa State on the other side. He's 9,400. You have Beck ahead of him, or is that another playable spot?
I have Beck ahead of him. Not by a lot, but Beck is cheaper. He throws the ball more and more efficiently. Kansas State is very content to just ride Giddens. And Iowa State has a better defense than Kansas State. So he's not towards the top. I have 2% of him, 3 lineups total.
Okay, so very, very limited. But there we have it. I mean, again, nothing too crazy. Yeah, I got you, Slim. A big win. I got to give you guys some props. I'm not the biggest Venables fan, but you did what you did. We'll see how that goes. Let's get to running back. We'll talk about that. And then, of course, we're going to be talking Black Friday deal, everything that we've got going on, some really, really cool stuff. We will get there in just a bit, no doubt. But running back, of course, is filled with options. And we start, again, with SMU, Brashard Smith, $8,100. I assume that you have to have at least some interest in him here.
Absolutely. I think he's one of the better running back plays on the entire slate when you look at his recent role. And then this team just being a 2-touchdown favorite over Cal. He's actually caught more passes recently too, which it didn't make a lot of sense how they used him in the middle of the season. I think he was hurt and playing through an injury because they were limiting his snaps and limiting his routes, but he's a former wide receiver for Miami. He sets up really well, especially now that he's catching more passes. He's kind of matchup proof at this point. Like him quite a bit. He is owned, so you're going to have to work around that a little bit, but he's an awesome play up at the top.
When you look at, obviously, you know, there's a million different ways, but let's go all the way to the top because you were pretty quick, I think, to say, you know what, quarterback up there, more of a luxury spend, nothing that really caught your eye. Do you feel the same way about Scatabo, about Taj Brooks, even Sampson to a lesser extent? I mean, if you want to spend at running back, you can. I guess the question is, do you want to?
Yeah, I think it's one of the best places to spend.
Okay.
Scatabo for sure, even though he's extremely expensive. You just don't really have roles like this unless you're Ashton Genty. He makes a ton of sense. He's coming off a 28 carry game. He's the second most targeted player in the Arizona State offense. Arizona's defense is lifeless, especially on the ground. They're allowing nearly 5 yards per carry to opposing backs. He's just going to be really owned on this slate, and he's more expensive. So when you go down, he has a similar role to Taj Brooks. He's a similar role to Dylan Sampson. If those players are going to come in under-owned, I'm happy to make that pivot in a lot of spots and just spread my exposure between the 3 of them. But individually, nothing negative to say about Cam Scatabo. That would just be an ownership preference if you want to make a pivot up at the top.
When Cats shut him down today, that's a bold call, but I kind of think in a disturbing way that I could see something weird happening in that game.
I could see anything happening in that game.
That's a weird game. There's going to be at least 1 or 2 like bozo things today. I could see Arizona State fumbling the bag.
Me too.
Let's keep it going. What about Devin Neal? He's in that next range. LaQuint Allen is in that next range. Woody Marks is in that next range. Are they lost? Are they somewhere? What do you make of kind of that mid 8K running back spots?
They all have a hole you could poke in them. Devin Neal just typically doesn't have this crazy workload, but they haven't had high shot. And last week we saw him carry the ball 37 times, which I don't even know if he's carried the ball 20 times this year. He's usually in like that 13 to 16 range. And he was rolling. So, I mean, he broke the slate last week. I mean, I would have played him hands down if I would have known he was going to get 37 carries. So now it's like, do you think he gets his normal 18 or do you think he gets 37? I will say they did run the ball like a crazy amount. Kansas just got off a ton of plays, like just individually designed carries, not including scrambles or sacks. Neal was at 37. Jalen Daniels was at 7. Sevion Morrison was at 11. And Luke Grimm had 1. So they ran the ball nearly 50 times in their last game. Typically, that's just not going to happen for teams. But I mean, that's still a larger percentage than he typically sees. So Neal, I think, is interesting based on some of the, I guess, meta with this offense. Otherwise, who were the other guys you mentioned in this range?
Like Woody Marks.
Marks against Notre Dame is tough, especially with Maeva in there.
And then like LaQuint Allen. It's just, there's not that much there. It's pretty thin, honestly.
Yeah, I didn't get a ton of LaQuint Allen. I don't think I got any, actually. And I have 4 lineups with Woody Marks that I'm debating removing entirely.
One guy got brought up a couple weeks ago. And this offense, I mean, when you play West Virginia, everything works. So I don't take a ton of it, but Baylor and Kansas, let's just say, is a low key, really good game. I think 2 teams that are playing well. Bryson Washington, 7,600. Looks like he's going to be around 15% owned. Is that a spot that you're willing to get to unlock maybe some of the Baylor offense?
Yeah, I think you can. Great total in this game. Kansas is a little weaker up front. We knew that coming into the season with their departures at defensive tackle. He's not handling as large of a percentage as some other backs, but still had 19 or 29 carries in their last game. He's been above 17 in 4 straight games. They're not using Richard Reese at all. Pendergrass is a change of pace. Pretty decent pass game role for him. I think you can use him. He's just fine, in my opinion.
As we work down, even though it does look like there could be a lot of salary allocation to running back, you could pay down if you want to. And some of these guys, I'm just going to throw them out to you. Raheem Sanders, Damian Martinez, Nate Noel, even Maffa, I guess, to a lesser extent. Are those, I guess, even Jam Miller? I didn't even realize he was that low. I don't know what to say. I actually bet his prop. I looked at that. I was able to get some props. I was across the border. But what do you make of the pay down options for running back today?
I like spreading them out. The chalk is going to be Damian Martinez for Miami, but his role's not all that much better than a lot of these other players. He's just being propped up by a game total that's slightly better than some other ones. And when they blow teams out, we do see Fletcher play more, which has me a little bit concerned, but I think you could say he has the best role and matchup combined for this range. Once you get a little lower than that, Raheem Sanders is fine. He's been splitting time too, and I think that's largely just because he was hurt a few weeks ago. So Lenora Sellers is carrying a fair amount. Oscar Attaway is functioning as a change of pace. I think I would rather play Martinez at price, but it's pretty close between them. Then once you get a little lower, Nate Noel against Arkansas, I don't know about the role for him either because Marcus Carroll is still there, and it's become a little more of a change of pace. Last game, Noel 25 carries, Carroll 14, so that's at least in the back of my mind, but he should at least be the 1A. The players I'm really interested in playing down here are CJ Donaldson and Jaheim White. The timeshare backs for West Virginia, just pure leverage off Garrett Green in the pass game. No one's playing these guys, but everyone's playing the West Virginia passing attack, which should always concern you considering they're a power run game. It's just hard to project them because it's split between 2 guys, but I like taking shots on both of them, won't play them together. And then Jam Miller, you mentioned, I think he's interesting if Bama can run the ball against Auburn. He's just so cheap at this point. He hasn't been good, but he's kind of worked ahead of Haynes, and the price is very, very cheap on him.
Speaking of cheapies down there are a couple other guys that are that cheap. Cedric Alexander, you mentioned, do you think that by extension, say Pavia is unable to carry on maybe some of the carries that we've seen him, does it go to a straight back like Alexander? Or is the front just too strong?
I think they'll rotate guys. So instead of giving more works to running backs, they've just given Nate Johnson some work, the backup QB, which has been annoying. Cedric Alexander hasn't carried more than 10 times in 4 straight games. The only real wrinkle here is Newberry's out. He's been their change of pace, but they're happy to use many change of pace backs. Money Jones is still there, Gillespie. They'll run Stowers sometimes at tight end. I just don't think you have anything more than like a 14 carry ceiling, and that's absolute max. They seem to want him parked in like that 10 carry range.
One more cheapie. What about Jamarian Wilcox for Kentucky? You know, them and Louisville in a competitive game. Is that just a no?
I'm not playing any Kentucky players. They're on their 3rd string QB. Could be just an epic mess for that team.
It's always an epic mess for Kentucky. Are you getting the mostly 2 QB lineups?
Yeah, there's like 5 that aren't, and I'm not going to X out.
Okay. Who the hell is Rashad Dubinion? That sounds
change of pace back.
Sounds like a made up person. I think we covered most of it. I mean, you've got like, if you want a low sub 5%er, you have Judkins down there. But again, I'm not sure what the workload looks like between him and Travion and just in general.
They're just like, this is the last week of the year. They're huge favorites against Michigan, who's not playing. Like Michigan's 2 best players are out of this game. If they're up by 3 scores at halftime, like I don't think Judkins or anyone on Ohio State plays the second half snap.
You wouldn't think so. They got bigger things going on.
And they're playing a lifeless opponent.
Yeah. I mean, obviously they're going to, I don't see them. I'm with you. I'm easiest to say. I see it the same way. FanDuel, a lot of the same. It looks like the only difference is Scatterbo is getting crazy ownership over there just because his price is even more playable. Jordan James is over there. Oregon's like upwards of 20-point favorite against Washington. Obviously, it's not the same Washington team. And then the classic Texas backfield is over there with Whit Weisner coming in somewhat moderately owned. Anything else on FanDuel? What do you see over there?
Weisner is very cheap. I think you could still throw some darts on blue if you want to. I don't know that backfield is solidified in their roles. But I think Weisner, when no one's making stupid mistakes, will lead that backfield. James comes in just behind him as far as guys that differ between DraftKings and FanDuel. I worry about the Oregon guys too. They're in the same situation as Ohio State, playing a lifeless Washington team as 2-score favorites. And we've seen them take the foot off the gas for Noah Whittington, maybe even like some other deeper backs. So he's risky, but he's cheap. You have some of that factored in at 9,200, whereas like the Ohio State backs, I don't think you really have that in price. Otherwise, there's not too much that's different down here. Amari Daniels handled a massive workload for Texas A&M. He's just in the toughest matchup he'll be in all year long against Texas on the other side. You've got Penn State, Maryland on this slate for some unknown reason. I think their running backs are both hurt at this point. Singleton clearly was dealing with an injury, but like Katron Allen, I think had 1 first-half carry last week, which was, I did not see that coming whatsoever. So now you kind of have risk with them both. They're also in the same position as Ohio State and Oregon. They are playing the second worst team in the Big Ten this week. Should be completely cupcake matchup for them. And they have postseason aspirations. They can't really make the Big Ten championship unless Ohio State loses, but like this team is nothing to play for today.
Yeah, it's all of these teams. That's the one.
The top of the Big Ten is it's a horrible week for the top of the Big Ten. Every team is in a useless game.
It really is. Unlike the SEC, where it seems like everyone has something to play for, the Big Ten is a giant mess in that regard. What about Cade Durham?
He got benched last week for Josh Williams, who had the game of his career.
Do you think that possibly could be is that just like steam chasing, or do you think there's something to that?
I don't think you play him. I think at the
Durham.
very worst, like it's probably a hot hand.
Okay. Is Morrison getting too cute at 3K for KU?
Yeah.
Maffa playable. We talked about him a little bit.
He had the worst game I've ever seen.
I can't wait to see this game today to see if Clemson, I don't know what to expect in that game.
I think they
honestly.
lose.
Well, that'll
But yeah,
solidify it.
for GPP stuff, Mapa's good.
Yeah. I can't. Oh, man. It's going to be really, really weird, wild stuff to see where South Carolina goes to um, if they win this game. But all right, let's get to wide receivers, and let's also get to, you guys know, it's the holidays. It's been Thanksgiving. I hope everyone, again, had an awesome time with everything, but we're celebrating. We've been running deals, Black Friday deals, Cyber Monday. It's all the same stuff, but Black Friday has extended into Saturday here, and what we were running is the Black Friday sale. The code, it's Black Friday, all one word. And what it is, 50% off any core or max package. If you have seen what we are using here, obviously the results speak for themselves. We've had Stokastic avatars win millies this year. Of course, that's always fantastic to see, but it's not just about that. It's just go to the leaderboards and see. A lot of people are using these tools to get better, to innovate their process, and now you can use them yourself. You get Discord as well. That code is there. It expires tomorrow, so before the NFL slate, and we got another one, take advantage, man. It's right there for you. Give it a shot, and if you find it's not for you, you were able to check them out at a really nice price bump. We have a strong feeling you're going to stick around. These are going to become an integral part of your building process. Just really good data, really good tools. The team did just an outstanding job. Wide receivers we go. Let's see what we've got. We've got Syracuse really right at the top. They jump off the board, and there's probably, I mean, not probably, it is price related. You're talking about Meeks and Gadsden. These guys are sub 6K, 10,900 for the two of them. What are you doing with them? And again, I know you weren't like jamming McCord, but it still feels like you might want a piece of this offense.
Yeah, I think you definitely do. And this is just an interesting wrinkle between NFL and college football. There's all these like heuristics that you want to stack your players, especially you would think so with Syracuse being like a top 3 pass rate team in college football. But like McCord takes so many sacks that there is a world where like 2 Syracuse receivers are optimal and McCord's not because of how many sacks he takes. So I wouldn't be trying to like build in any hard and fast rules with Syracuse. Like, oh, it needs to be stacked. I need to have McCord. I think it's okay to be overweight on the receivers and not McCord himself, especially considering Miami has a great pass rush. To kind of parse them out, Pena is dealing with an injury. He only played about 50% of the snaps in their last game. Still was able to get there. I mean, he had 3 targets, and now should be a little healthier. I'm not sure. But if you're worried about safety with him, just play Meeks or Gadsden. You have 100 more expensive. Gadsden's 400 cheaper. Both of them are exceedingly involved. The only difference in the offense with Pena hurt is you'll probably see more guys like Darrell Gill or Justice Ross Simmons, the very deep guys. Zeed Haynes is also back with the team. I don't think he plays, but he's at least a name to say out there. To me, with all that nuance to Syracuse, just play Meeks and Gadsden if you're worried about injuries and safety. Those are the 2 locked-in players.
As we go down, Jordan Tyson looks like he's in a really good spot. You were talking to me about him, they seem to lock on to him at times. 6,700. Is he a core play for you today?
Not a core play, but he's like Daniel Jackson of the South, man.
Yep.
These guys that are awesome receivers on awful passing teams, but they have such dominant target shares that it doesn't matter. Tyson has a 38% target share. He's averaging 13 targets a game over the last 4 contests. He's another guy I think you're just completely fine getting as a one-off.
Every time, at least in the past month, we've had SMU on the slate. You know, we've talked about Smith, certainly, but we've talked about Roderick Daniels. He's 3,900 again. Going to be pretty popular. And we did have a message from Steve McGee who was saying last guy, low-owned DK 20, 4,200. It wouldn't be Daniels in the sense of he's not going to be low-owned. I think that might be Cam Coleman, who's at the same price. But I want to ask you about the SMU pass catcher first.
Yeah, he's awesome. He's my most owned receiver.
Yeah. Do you like Cam Coleman at the same price?
I think Cam Coleman's fine. He's only played well against awful teams, but he's a 5-star freshman who's really kind of taken a little bit of time to come into his own. So I think Cam Coleman is fine. This is like a much more difficult matchup than last week where he absolutely bodied the slate.
Yes, he did.
But yeah, if you wanted to use that as your leverage point, I don't see a huge problem in it.
I mean, he's got 5 touchdowns in 2 games, but Louisiana Monroe will be a get right spot for all, even though Louisiana Monroe has a lot to play for today, which is more than we could say ever in the past. But let's see. What else do we have here? We've got Jeremy Bernard, Jacoby George, a lot of these mid-range guys. Trevor Pena, who's another, you already mentioned him with Syracuse. Hudson Clement. What are you doing kind of in this next batch? Caleb Douglas, sorry to keep throwing names out there, but there's a lot of guys in that like 5K range.
Yeah, I'll kind of just rattle through some of them. First of all, just like Texas Tech. Anyone who's catching passes today is in the best spot of their careers against West Virginia. You've got Josh Kelly up at the top. I mean, he's an amazing play. You've got Douglas at 4.8, amazing play. If you can't afford him, I'm fine playing Eakin. He's not as involved as some of these other players on Texas Tech, but man, he's going to be running down the field with no resistance at all today. And he's not uninvolved either. You look at Eakin, he's averaging 6.5 targets per game. He's just behind Josh Kelly and Douglas, so it seems like he's a win sprinter. He's not. He's actually pretty involved. So Texas Tech, I think, is largely going to be a team to look at today. Kansas versus Baylor, you have a lot of really cheap Baylor players. Ashton Hawkins at 3,600 still. Michael Trigg is at 31. He's been extremely involved. His route rate is up to 80% over the last couple of games. He's someone you can use at damn near the stone min, who's extremely involved in this offense. Those are two cheap players to potentially look at. Otherwise, some of the other mid-price guys, Hudson Clement is a name you just briefly mentioned. I think West Virginia is still risky because of their willingness to run the ball. And actually, it's more like a desire to run the ball. When they can play how they want to, they take the ball out of Garrett Green's hands, or they use him as a component of their run game rather than it coming through the air. So Clement, for that reason, is a little bit risky. I think Sims and stuff, if you're not careful, are going to artificially boost him, even though he's only averaging 5.7 targets per game and just over 50 yards. I'd be very careful with Hudson Clement. And I think that's about it for the own guys you mentioned. Bernard should be a very deep GPP play. They're just using him as like a screen pass catcher. And I guess like Cameron for Baylor at 4.4 is in this range. He's fine. Cole Taylor at tight end, I'd rather just play some of the players that have more upside at 3,800. He's the West Virginia guy. There's always the Clemson receivers down here. Wesco at 3,500. Very difficult matchup, but that price is right. We briefly mentioned that in the Clemson stacks. I think they're fine. And that's most of my higher owned receivers. Luke Grimm, I guess one last guy. If you're playing Daniels, he makes a lot of sense. He's clearly asserted himself as the number one receiver in Kansas.
Are you getting to any Keyshawn Smith for SMU?
A little bit, but he's sort of hurt by Hudson playing today. It was narrow. Hudson had the concussion, but he's back.
Any Chris Hunter love?
I X'd him out.
Okay. Get out of here. Sorry, buddy. Not for us. We got, I'm trying to look. Oh yeah. I always like to ask you about
12 targets in the, maybe I shouldn't have done this, but I don't know. I X'd out Noah Fafita, so Arizona State is an exceedingly difficult matchup because of injuries. They're a team, I don't know, unlike some of these other teams we've talked about who started the year hurt somehow. I don't know what the hell these guys were doing in August in camp, but they're all back.
Boys over here. Yeah.
For real.
I got no answers. You said you X'd out a couple guys there. I assume you left McMillan, or are you actually just saying nothing?
I didn't get a lot of the expensive receivers, but McMillan, yeah, I'm never going to X McMillan.
Yeah.
Let's see how much it is. I got 2% just as a one-off because I'm playing zero Fafita.
Fair enough. Chris Albers, friend of the show. He's here every week. Very generous with his time and the super chats. We appreciate it. Thanks for the content. You guys rock. Calling it. One of the Stokastic members getting that 50K today. I agree. Favorite, we do this every week. Favorite GPP pick for quarterback, running back, and wide receiver. Here we go. All right. I'll go first. Quarterback. I'm going to give you some weird ones because I don't want to just go, very shady business. I'm going to go with Jalen Daniels at quarterback. I'll go running back. Oh, God. I can't believe I'm going to say this. I honestly think that Jam Miller is going to have a pretty good game today. I think he's going to get some serious work. I think the game script will be in his favor. If you're paying down flat 4, I'll go Jam Miller. And then wide receiver, I'm going to go with Cam Coleman. I think he's just emerging at the right time. He's going to get his looks today.
Quarterback, I'm going to do all sub 10% guys at least.
Yeah.
And some pretty deep cuts. Sawyer Robertson for Baylor, 7,700. He's going to be below 10%. If you wanted to like go up the board a little bit, I think Jennings is under owned. Not sure how deep we're trying to get, so I'll try to give you a couple guys. I think at running back, the ultimate leverage is CJ Donaldson and Jaheim White. Donaldson will be even less owned than White. We're talking about like a 2%er here. He gives you leverage off everything West Virginia and the highest owned QB on the slate. And when Donaldson succeeds, Garrett Green fails directly, not just through passing volume stuff, but the rushing stuff along the goal line. So for a really deep cut, he's going to be the play. And for like a semi-owned running back, I think you could look to, this is a little tougher. I would say Dylan Sampson. He's like going to be around 10%, just leverage off like Scadable and the guys at the top. For low-end receivers, I think you have a lot of good options. There's 2 Texas Tech guys that don't project to be that owned. Douglas is soaking up a lot of it. So if you're willing to pay up Josh Kelly or down, you have Coy Eakin, who is probably going to be like a 2%er in that Texas Tech offense against the West Virginia secondary. So this is very weird. You actually have a couple of guys that are projected to be extremely low owned in just like the ultimate nut game. The other one is Trigg, seeing an increase in his role. He's going to be like a 2% or 2.
Motivated. First super chat ever. We really appreciate that. What is the best practice for global max exposure per player? So if you're just talking about like, I think the honest answer is don't have rules, because every slate is different. And there are situations where you don't need 80% of a guy, but sometimes if your risk tolerance is allowing it, I don't think it's crazy to straight jam someone. I don't know if you have anything different there, but to me, it really is a unique slate every time. And I try to tell myself there's going to be a time where I'm at a 20 lineups, I might have 18 with a certain guy and I'm willing to take 90% of them. And then other times I don't have anyone above 50%.
Yes. For example, this is entirely like risk tolerance, I think.
Yep.
Ask yourself, all right, if I play 90% of a guy and he gets hurt on the first play, is it going to ruin my day? I think that's like
he
the
slips
easiest.
on a taco. What will
that
happen?
happened to me and Ben.
Yeah. And it ruined my day, but that's neither. That's because I'm deranged. No, that is how you have to go in. If you say to yourself, I'm okay with getting bageled in MME, I think you can be super aggressive and take real shots. But if you say, you know what, I want to not guarantee, but I want to have a higher chance of having a sweat, of getting to the 330 window with some teams, you probably realistically want to allocate a more wide exposure pool.
I personally prefer to have a wider exposure pool because I am a coward and get really upset when players get hurt immediately and it ruins my day. But it's also slate dependent. For example, last night, Nate Frazier for Georgia, who projected to be the lead back, and he's a backup, was extremely underpriced. So I had like 80% of him because like he could get hurt very early in the game and still get there because he was so underpriced. On today's slate, where we don't have a player like that, my highest owned guy is at 38%, which is still pretty high, but it's not like the 80% we saw last night.
Yeah. And then you got game scripted, but that's neither.
I didn't even see the box score. I went to bed. They were down 17-0. I woke up. It was 8 overtime. So
you don't understand what was going on in that game. We don't have enough time to explain how many insane things happened. It was insane. There's nothing else to say.
What happened twice yesterday? Like Justin Marshall was probably like 60% owned on the main slate, and they decided to throw the ball like 50 times in the first half, and they had really done the opposite all season long, which was a surprise. But anyway, like the other thing is usually if you're getting a guy who's like 80% owned in your own portfolio, sometimes you're not dead because they're also highly owned. Yeah. I saw a lot of good screenshots in our Discord that included Justin Marshall, and I was like, oh, damn, I guess you really didn't. It didn't really matter what happened with him because he was already so owned.
One more super chat. Apologies, Sam. I skipped right over that. $6,600 or less running back. Right. Brown, Moffitt. What about Jarquez Hunter? He's 6,200 against the Alabama front.
You said 66?
66. Honestly, Raheem Sanders, I don't think is crazy.
Raheem Sanders is the highest owned one I have. I want to say kind of Maffa though. Honestly, I'm a little surprised that I have more Sanders than Maffa. And I think for me, that's just I needed a 300 in some spots. But if you have the 66, I think I would just play Maffa. He projects up better just straight up. They're the team that's favored. It's a tough matchup, but it's a little bit of a weird price. I would rank them Maffa 1, Sanders 2, Hunter 3. Pretty close between all three of them.
If you're making a South Carolina stack, would you rather have Harbor or Simon?
What time is that game?
I think it's at noon Eastern. Yeah, it is.
Simon. I mean, I can't play Harbor.
That's gonna be, like I said, the minute I get off this, I'm gonna watch that. Probably put on some greasy college basketball, and these don't even get me started on college basketball. The shit that goes on that makes this look normal. Shout out, looking at you, Louisville. Make your free throws. Why a FanDuel wide receiver? I mean, I don't understand. Chucky, by the way, it's Chucky. It's like 90% from the line, missing front ends. Jackson Meeks, Jalen Noel, no surprise over on FanDuel. If you're playing Rocco, he's going to be there. DK for Florida, is he who you're pairing with Lagway?
I think so. DK and Badger.
Yeah. Okay, plus twos. What about like Aaron Anderson?
Pretty difficult spot overall, but their prices dropped. I don't know. Not preferred play. Could be like a decent leverage point if that's where you wanted to go with it.
What about the Miami wide receivers? You see them popping up. They're going to all have some decent ownership, from Restrepo to Jacoby George to Horton. Are they just, if you get them, you get them?
I think so. I'm not playing a ton of Ward. I have a little bit. Those are all stacked, but I also think this game is it is more expensive than, like you have the Texas Tech game, 3 points less in total, but significantly cheaper in price. So if I'm looking to like stack up QB wide receiver, get running backs involved, you can do that. And then in this Miami game, it's just so much more expensive. Both QBs are above 9K, Ward's above 10K. Like Restrepo 7,500. So you're soaking a lot of your salary into those guys. What I like doing and what I did a lot of with this Miami Syracuse game is play like Martinez Meeks, Restrepo Gadsden, like smaller mini correlations that don't involve huge stacks of the whole game.
Yeah, I love that strategy. Like I said, I made that up of calling them twists, but yeah, you said mini correlation.
They're called twists.
No, they're definitely not. I literally just say that. Mini correlation sounds better, but yeah, like just basically not including the quarterback, but you have a little twist of one-on-one within the game. Thoughts on Brady for Cal? They will be playing from behind. I really hope they're playing from behind. I'm a little worried about SMU today, but I hope it's fine.
Whoa.
I'm just saying. Cal's lost.
They're your team, dude.
No, they're going to be fine. They're going to do it, but they make it interesting in not the cool way.
The biggest concern with Brady is Tobias Merriweather being back. His routes have jumped 3 straight games. He's averaging 5.7 targets per game in that span. So I think everyone who's at the top of this Cal pecking order might be at risk of falling down one slot, because it looks like they want Merriweather to be their number 1. This is a small sample, but I think it's enough to poke a hole in Brady. I think I'd rather just play Merriweather straight up for 300 more if you could find that money, or just like go down and play Trig or something.
Yeah, Trig is real Trig. Would you rather play? Well, it's always a weird situation with the super flex, like Neal or Klubnik.
I'd rather play Klubnik.
Yeah, I'd probably. I mean, not to overhaul your lineup, but yeah, you could like slide in a Wesco or Williams or something and figure it out. Donaldson over White at running back as last man in.
How contrarian are you? If you already have a ton of lone guys, play White. If you still need that piece of optionality or just leverage, I would play Donaldson.
I would agree. Man, 38. Oh, you know who we didn't talk about at all? And maybe it's fine. First of all, it's supposed to be snowing, but are you getting to any Luther Burden?
A little bit, if you think Brady Cook is healthy. Like, that is such a wide range of outcomes depending on Brady Cook's
health. Him and Weiss. Are you getting any Weiss?
I did not get a lot of Weiss, a little bit of Burden, but
Okay.
you're making a lot of guesses. Burden's had a terrible year. It's not all his fault. He was hurt. Cook has been hurt. You kind of need like a lot to go right. Both their health to be healthy. I don't know. It's worth a dart throw in a few things, but it's not going to be a huge stand.
Yeah. Slim with the 3v3. I would go the Jennings side. I don't mind Cook, and I do like Tyson today. I do worry about that whole situation. From the weather to the situation with him. I like Jennings quite a bit, and I like Meeks and White. I think you're in good shape there. I'm just kind of jumping around because I actually wanted to ask you about this guy earlier and I got distracted. Other side of that game, we'll call it a twist. Are you getting into any Andrew Armstrong?
Yeah, I have some stacks of that game, and Andrew Armstrong's just fine.
Okay. Any love for
Twists.
Montrell Johnson?
Yeah, he was back up to like 18 carries. I have it right here. He played what? Yeah, 18 carries. Somehow I remember that. He had second game back, went from 2 carries to 18. I mean, I thought that Baugh and Jackson played well enough to be larger parts of this offense, but I think they want him as their number one. So yeah, he's fine.
Cool. Yeah, and we got about 5 minutes left here, friends. Again, fire your questions away. If you have questions for us, always Matt_Gajewski on Twitter at JazzRazBets. And over, if you do some gambling, go to oddchopper.com and take advantage of those deals as well. We've got a portfolio EV deal running right across the top of the screen. You also got to hop in our Tails Discords if you want to straight get some picks, sweat out college basketball with me, soccer, whatever else the hell is going on in my wacky world of sports. How are we feeling? I don't think we got any. I mean, I was scanning Twitter pretty briefly, but I don't think we got any altering news where you had to alter any projections.
No, it's 2 weeks in a row. I think we're good.
Look at that. Yeah, man, these top end running backs, I think, are the key to the slate. And then I think the other key to the slate, honestly, is the $3,900 wide receivers from Daniels to Cam Coleman.
Yeah, I also would add how West Virginia scores their touchdowns.
Wow. West Virginia just shouldn't be allowed on the slate. You're not playing Dane Key, right?
No.
Okay. I just had to make sure. There's just Carnell Tate. Yeah, that's a no.
Carnell Tate would be an awesome play if you could guarantee me a whole game.
Should see some run, but yeah, I totally agree. You just don't know what you're going to get. Jam Miller in play? Yeah, definitely. Flat 4. Jordan James versus Washington? Yes, but workload, they got a lot to play for, and it doesn't include dusting Washington. So I just what about as a real flyer? Any love for Brew McCoy?
Yeah, I think Iamaleava stinks, but
him and Squirrel White are sub 35.
Yeah, you could definitely do it.
Yeah, there's some weird cheapies down there. I'm just scanning it. Even Moochie, well, I don't know. Moochie Dixon's 33.
I think Moochie Dixon is he's
Yes.
fine. I'm a little worried because they brought back Hudson.
Seems like an unnecessary. There are guys $500-600 I feel a little better at. Thoughts on Hawkins as a value wide receiver?
He's great.
Yeah, definitely. Cam Ward, worth it? I mean, worth it's always kind of a loaded term. He's a great player. If you have money you want to build differently, I think so. But if I was building one lineup, he would not be my quarterback. He wouldn't be either of my quarterbacks.
I would probably use Garrett Green and Jennings.
I would save salary as well. Chris Johnson on FanDuel, 6,100, 28 targets in last 3 games. Let's see.
Chris Johnson?
That's what I'm trying to.
Who's Chris Johnson?
That's what I was trying to decipher when I said, maybe. Do you mean Tez Johnson for Oregon? Let us know who Chris Johnson is. Maybe the Titans guy is back, and he's about 45, and he went back to Chris Hunter. Okay, Chris Hunter. We talked about him briefly. I believe you were somewhat indifferent in the sense. I know you said you weren't getting to him, but you may be a little worried about that Arizona passing attack.
I'm worried that they just get blanked, but I guess you could use him. He has a ton of targets. I just don't know Like, what is the efficiency with this?
Yeah, it's not the best analysis you're ever going to hear. Clearly in play, but not jumping out for me.
Agreed.
Isaac Brown or Jeremiah Smith. We didn't really talk about Jeremiah Smith. I think it's the same problem with him, Ibuka, whoever you want to talk about. He's going to do some damage, and then he's going to be eating a hot dog, watching the game like everybody else late in the game.
And Notre Dame could do that as well, but the problem is their spread's a lot closer. They're projected to get tested a little more than, the Ohio State team.
Yes. Scatabo versus Taj Brooks straight up. I would take Scatabo, but it's really difficult.
Agreed.
Oh, friends, yeah. We're going to get over 100 likes here because we've had a hell of a year. We're not going anywhere. Bowl season. We're going to do some fun stuff. We might do, what do you think, fella? You think we should do a playoff reaction show? I think we might have to.
Why not?
I have too many hot takes about what's going on in society that I think people need to hear and people definitely don't need to hear. But you know what? As the guy in The Wedding Singer said, I have the microphone and you don't. So you're going to have to listen to it. We'll do that. We'll get you some information. But friends, I think we're in really good shape here. And on that note, let's bounce on out. Obviously, it goes without saying, just been a hell of a time. We love doing this show. I do a lot of different sports, but college football is my favorite sport. This is my favorite show. I just love doing it. This and betting you. Just a blast each and every time, and it wouldn't be any fun if people didn't support us. So your support means everything. We have a blast doing it, and we hope to see some big-time results at the top of the leaderboards today. And again, take advantage of those deals. Take advantage of what we got going on. Get in Discord. Even if it's just something to test out. We love seeing new people in there. It's such a welcoming community. I think it's what Stokastic was all about, which is just bringing people together to talk DFS and on Odd Chopper to talk sports. And on that note, I can speak for me and Matt and for Mike. Thanks again, everyone, for hanging out with us all year. Let's finish it strong. Stay tuned for plenty more college football as bowl season approaches.